Okay.
Might be worth talking about something a little bit topical that happened today, and I'd be interested just to get your opinion on it. I'm not entirely familiar with India Willoughby as a personality in the UK. I know that I know she's trans. I know she's famous. I'm not sure what for, and I don't mean to be disparaging.
She was on Big Brother.
Oh, okay. Maybe I should.
And she was a TV presenter before that.
Right. Okay. Well, it happened on Twitter either in the last couple of days. Somebody had been quite rude and misgendered her. The question on Twitter was, "Who is India Willoughby?" And somebody responded with a man. And she seems quite petty on Twitter in general, but she picked up on this, checked out where the guy worked from his Twitter bio, reported him to his employer, reported him to a football team that his employer sponsors, and tagged in the local newspaper just for good measure. Now, this had the knock-on effect of his employer releasing a public statement saying it's unacceptable, it doesn't chime with their values, and they're treating this as a priority in terms of speaking to him. Now, it wouldn't be entirely unthinkable to think in the current climate, this gentleman may lose his job for what I agree was rude and unnecessary. And I appreciate you to no answer for India Willoughby or the trans community in general, but I just wanted to get your thoughts on whether that's the kind of thing as to why people think it's having a chilling effect on free speech. Maybe Debbie, you could speak to that first.
Yeah, I think it's appalling behaviour to go after somebody like that. People say what they think. People call me a man, and people call you a woman. What does it really matter? So it's something I let go. I've got far bigger things to worry about than this. And I think what we've seen here is potentially quite damaging to trans people. It does make us look petty. It makes us look vindictive, and it makes us look as if we're ready to have bully and intimidate at will, play the trans card, and everybody bows down to you. That's what it looks like to me. I think it's unwise and unhelpful of India Willoughby, and secondly of the way that the debate's gone around that. I wish it hadn't have happened.
Okay.
Cool. So I guess my position on this is consistent. I didn't think it's any different than if it was any other prejudice. I mean, if this person was misogynistic or racist or homophobic, I would, if you went into a cinema or something and one of the employees said something racist to your friend, you tell the manager, like, this isn't acceptable. Doesn't mean that you necessarily want this person fired or you want their income taken away from them or whatever. But what you want is to be able to go through society without misogynistic, transphobic, racist, homophobic, like, harassment. And so the ideal situation from an incident like this, whatever the prejudice is someone harasses you in some way, or your friend or your parents or whatever, and you tell the manager, and the manager's like, right, okay, well, clearly my employee or maybe all my employees need some kind of training here. We need to do something about this. And like, some people just don't know. I mean, it's rubbish, but some people say things without realizing what the impact is or whatever.
Is it fair to say that somebody refusing to accept somebody born a male is now a woman is akin to racism or homophobia or any other sort of overt bigotry that's led to oppression?
The easiest comparison here would be like if someone refused to recognize your marriage, like, to another man or something like that. And they were making a big point about it, how you're definitely not a couple, and maybe just overtly saying, like, you're not married, like, you can't marry because a marriage is between a man and a woman or something. That's just obviously homophobic. And it's the same in that, oh, it's just my opinion. I just don't accept that a man can marry a woman. That's just, it's the law. It's been tradition for hundreds of years. That's what God said. Like, all this kind of stuff. And I mean, for sure, like, it's a difference in an opinion if you want to boil it down to that much. But like, it's like obviously offensive, and offense isn't the only important thing here. But like, it's harassing. There's just no reason for you to say that. If you're a ferry driver, for example, like this person was, there's no reason why you have to tell trans people about what you think about them and all this kind of, like, I just, it's not important. And that should be in the training. Why do you have to say that this trans woman's a man? Why do you have to, like, tell someone that their marriage isn't legitimate or something?
I suppose it comes down to the idea. I think a lot of people consider it a worldview or a belief that you can identify yourself into another sex. I mean, we've already struggled to nail down an objective definition of it, which I suppose doesn't help. And I suppose, a comparison for me might be somebody, a Christian, for example, who is so convinced with the idea they have a soul, it's the most important aspect of their character. They live every waking moment of their life as if they have a soul. And I still think it's within my right to say I don't think that's true. And I suppose what's the difference there between somebody, and especially when you bring self-ID into the mix, somebody having a sincere opinion or belief, as rude as it may be, that that person isn't legitimately female or male?
Yeah. So I guess I think it's like comparable to, like, we can compare it to lots of different things. Like we could say, oh, is it like a religion? And we could also say, like, is it like sexual orientation or handedness? There are some things that we can say exist. Like we'll all agree that like handedness exists. Some people are better writing with a right hand and some people are better writing with a left hand. And I would guess at least two of us here don't believe in souls. So, there's some kind of disagreement here. I would say when approaching someone about what their handedness is or what their sexual orientation is, I would just ask them, like, they could lie to me. They could be delusional and not know and think it's different. Like that's possible. The only way I can really find out is to ask them. And that's just the same with whether someone's a man or a woman.
But what if it might be considered a hate crime to deny the existence of someone's soul? I'm trying to get to how we decide what's more important. At what point does one take precedence over the other?
So I'm an atheist and I'm an atheist activist. And I think that if someone come to me and said, do you think souls exist? And I said, no, obviously not. And then they said, that's a hate crime, you're going to jail. Like, that's garbage. If I'm walking up to some gender critical person in the street and be like, do you think I'm a woman? And then they're like, no, sorry. And then I'm like, oh, you should be arrested and put in jail. Like that's nonsense, isn't it? But at the same time, if this person's going out of their way to, like, if I, as an atheist activist, am waiting outside a church shouting, like, souls aren't real, your God's a lie, all this, I could say much ruder things about most major religions than that. Like, that's kind of harassing them, isn't it? So it's not
covered. There is. I appreciate your argument for harassment there. Obviously, there are limits, but I would assume that standing outside a church and chanting them things would fall under the reasonable lines of protest, free expression. Anyway,
maybe it is like, there's definitely grey areas here. I mean, maybe if you stood outside like some I guess there's all different things. If you stood outside like a gay bar with a sign that said gay marriage is a lie or something like that, then you're clearly provoking people. But maybe the law would cover it. And it's a kind of a grey area. But if you're like standing outside someone's house and shouting them, that's obviously a different situation. And if you're, I am not a lawyer. I don't want a situation where we are like putting people in jail just for opinions. But it's also worth recognizing that people say, oh, they're doing this just because I had an opinion. And it's not. It's because they've been harassing people. So there is some kind of grey area between harassment and saying what you think is right.
Sure. Debbie, where are you on this idea that perhaps misgendering should be considered in the same bracket and certainly the same
deliberate misgendering?
Yeah, deliberate misgendering, deliberately provocative as sort of homophobia, racism, all the things our society does a fairly decent job at dealing with.
Well, I think you should come under the same definition of harassment with any other type of harassment, really, which is repeated, it's directed, so that one comment on social media saying, "Yeah, a man it's not harassment." If you were sending letters to the person and carrying on without after being told to stop, it is harassment, and it just seems to me that the reaction here is so different that it would be with anything else, that I think it's all been overblown and it's unhelpful in this one case where one comment, one arguably unkind, arguably offensive comment seems to have been taken far too seriously. If it's something that people say, if it was a tweet every day coming out, then yeah, it becomes harassment. But
yeah, I kind of agree with Debbie in a way.
Oh Jesus Christ!
I think that
we made it, guys. Well done.